So, this is it, huh?
That's right.
This is the new Nothing Ear Open. Great styling.
Yeah.
As always. Love
Always.
that. But you know, it's fundamentally flawed. I can't just get over that.
What, this?
No, not this specifically. Just, okay. If you can't block your ear canals, and this is just physics, you don't get good ANC. You can't, it's really tricky to get good noise cancelling.
Okay, but that might be the whole...
And there's more. It doesn't stop there. You can't get deep rumbly sub bass either. You know, that deep bass, it doesn't happen. Not to mention the environmental noise that interferes with your music. So high res is not a thing anymore. And you've got to play everything really loud. Like if you're in a noisy environment, your music has to be loud so you can hear it, which means you're just bombarding yourself with a lot of noise. And
Okay, I think you're missing the point here.
oh, I'm not getting the point. Which
No.
part of anything I said didn't make sense?
Well, first of all, it's not that it's impossible.
Well, yes, if you're really doing the R&B,
Sure.
but otherwise.
Did it occur to you that the things you said, that's the very reason people might want this? It's the transparency. They don't need ANC. The whole point is to stay aware.
Well, you know what? That just makes our life easier.
What do you mean?
Well, the way I see it, there's not that much to evaluate. You talk about, you know, the comfort, the controls,
Sure.
and stability on the head, because you need that.
Damn right you do.
And then you talk about sound.
Always.
There's literally nothing else.
Yeah.
There's a couple of features, but there's not much else to. It actually makes our job of reviewing it a lot easier.
That's a good point, actually. Why don't we split up the work? I'll talk about this comfort and stability. You talk about the sound.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, so we've had this for 2 weeks. Nothing sent it out, but and we get to keep it, but they don't get to say what we say on the video, right?
That's right.
Okay. In the 2 weeks, multiple times, I have basically forgotten it was on my head, which means it's very comfortable
True.
and it's super stable. Like, I think if I shake my head, it doesn't seem stable, but it just is.
That's it. That's all you have to say about it.
That's it. That's all there is to say about it.
Fair enough. I mean, I like the controls.
Controls are nice.
It's squeeze controls, but it's not really a button. But you do get a little bit of feedback, not tactile, but they have a little
that little
sound in
clicky
there,
noise, yeah,
and
yeah.
it works. And I like that you get volume control. I wish there was swipe up and down for volume. That's my favorite.
Always best.
But squeeze and hold for volume is not too bad. At least you get the control, so that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's the next best thing, really. And now it's your turn to talk about the sound.
Okay, well, it doesn't have to be high res, and it's not. It only supports AAC. So that's fine.
Yep, that's absolutely fine.
But you should have good tonal balance. So the balance between bass, mids, and highs, right?
Sure, why not?
The problem is, when I got this, it had bass.
Okay.
It had real bass, and then a couple of days later, that reduced. And I don't know if it's the firmware or not. So I'm going to assume that's just my unit.
Could just
and
be
I'm
a
going to
one-off.
assume there's a bit of bass,
Yep.
but not much. Like I said, there's no deep sub bass.
Yep.
There's a little bit of mid bass, and that's it. But people like bass.
You know what? People really do love their bass.
That's right, they do. And you're not going to get too much of it from here. It's not terrible, but it's not great.
Might be enough.
The problem with this is the mids and the highs, specifically the upper mids.
Okay.
Okay, so they've done this thing where they've boosted the upper mids, and it effectively sounds really resolving.
Okay, it's good.
Until you hear it for about 5 minutes and you realize that it exacerbates so much that things actually get really fatiguing to hear. It's something a lot of earbuds do, by the way.
You mean like the OnePlus does?
That's right. It's the same thing, but slightly different in its flavor. But to combat that, they give you EQ.
That's good.
Yeah, except the EQ
Oh no.
has a fundamental flaw.
What is it?
When you use the balanced preset, it's all good. It gets loud enough, but only just. You need to use it at 80-90% minimum if you're running by traffic, for example, in a busy city.
I see.
But if you use your custom EQ, it automatically lowers the volume. Even if you haven't done a thing, the volume is at a lower level by default.
Right.
And that's a problem. It becomes a
That
lot
is a
less
problem.
usable in traffic, in any kind of noisy environment. At home, it's fine, but out and about, yeah, that's a flaw. They're gonna have to fix that. But
They probably
you
might.
can fix the sound signature to a degree,
It's a start.
and then it sounds okay. It's nothing to write home about.
Okay, but it's still comfortable.
True. And you do get some nice features, like you get that low lag mode for what it's worth, and you get a multi-point.
That's a good one.
It is useful.
It's comfortable, it's stable. You can use it in less than noisy environments. It's not bad. And it looks great too.
Yes, all of those things, but it doesn't sound great. I think it should sound better than it does.
Not if
now.
you're just listening to podcasts or just casual music though.
I think in quiet environments you could apply a little custom EQ or just run it at a low volume and it'll be fine, just fine.
Yeah.
It is comfortable.
Yeah.
It looks snazzy.
It does.
And that's about it, really.
That's it. That's the review.
That's it. That's the review. Easy
But
as.
we usually really get into the audio.
I don't feel there's any need to get into the audio any more than that.
Okay, but what about things like battery life?
That's a good point. We got to talk about battery life, but also it just occurred to me, what about microphone quality?
That's a good point. We could do them together.
Let's do them together.
Okay, you're listening to the Nothing Here Open. I'm at home. I'm talking at a normal volume with no background noise. Not really. If I raise my voice, this is what it sounds like with the echoes in the room and whatnot. You tell me if that's any good. I do appreciate this form factor when I'm watching movies or a TV show. I do lose bass, a lot of bass. I do lose resolution overall, but because my ears are not blocked, it does feel like I'm sitting in a room and listening to speakers. It's not as good as speakers, but that feeling of sitting and having sound coming from not inside your head, but a little bit around that is quite nice. I quite like it. But it's time to take this outside, see if the audio processing actually cancels out background noise, and talk about battery life.
Okay, we're on our way to a busy intersection, a lot of traffic there, but you should be able to hear a fair bit of background noise now. Now, one of the other things I noticed was that when listening to music, if I listen at low volumes, the bass sounds like it's there. But when I really pump up the volume, I'm talking 90%, I don't know what's happening, but at really high volumes, 85, 90%, it doesn't seem to have as much bass as it does lower volumes.
Okay, look, I know I was supposed to keep this a light-hearted video, just I couldn't help it. I could hear that they were doing something to the bass as you punched up the volume, but what was it? So I tested it out, and it turns out they are actually managing it. So my guess is the driver just cannot handle getting loud and keeping the bass where it is. So here's the frequency response at a lower volume using the balanced default preset, and then the same thing at a higher volume sounds like this. Notice the sub bass. The mid bass remains roughly the same, but then the sub bass, everything below sort of 70 hertz, it just falls off a cliff. And then the really low bass, it's there at low volumes to a degree, but at higher volumes that goes away completely and you just don't get that deep sub bass. So bass sounds a lot less impactful at higher volumes, and I think they did that on purpose just to make sure the drivers can go to a loud enough volume. So they knew they had to get loud because it doesn't get that loud in noisy environments, but without the driver losing its composure. Also, the custom EQ, I'm sharing one with you over here. You can use it. It'll kind of make it seem a little less exciting, but a little less fatiguing and more even overall. Again, I recommend quieter conditions, lower volumes for the best sound quality out of this. Okay, back to the microphone test.
All right, so this is it. This is the most traffic I could find. There's a guy tending to the lawn over there. This is the worst case scenario for the noise cancelling on the microphone. What do you think? Is the voice coming across clearly while the background is being suppressed? You take a listen, you tell me in the comments. But meanwhile, battery life. Okay, in about an hour's usage, you lose about 10% of battery. That means in theory, you get 10 hours. In practice, you should get about 8 hours. This is just not an issue. You get some recharges out of the box, but mostly the important thing is 8 hours, which is pretty decent and what I would expect given that it only goes up to AAC. So the question then is, what do you think? Would you buy it at this price, given that you need to run it at loud volumes in this kind of scenario to be able to hear anything? And at loud volumes, bass tends to suffer. It just tends to suffer. There's no other way to put it. It is comfortable though. And it is snazzy, and it's got good battery life, and it's got multi-point, and it's got that low lag mode they have in the app, and the controls are pretty decent. It's got all of that going for it. I just wish it sounded a little better. I think they need to work on that a little more. Would you buy it though? You tell me.